Hi, we had a few questions from our fall harvesting webinar. We thought we'd isolate those questions and give them here for you.
Here's a good question. For the first time, I had leafcutter bees show up in my bee house. However, I have both mason bee cocoons and leafcutters in the same nest box. How can I harvest the mason bees without disturbing the leafcutter cocoons?
Um, so a valid question, when you're leaving your cocoons out, uh, in the Northwest, we actually have a leaf cutter that's an early spring leaf cutter. Um, so this cocoon was filled full of leaf cutter bees. We're seeing it, and I don't really want to put leafy material into a refrigerator where it could possibly get moldy. So when you're finding leaf cutters, I'm just separating them and putting them into something that's going to go into a shed. Um, we have one of our cocoon trays had this pile of fluff. Okay, and it looked like insulation. Is when you're pulling this apart, inside here are cocoons. This is a wool carder, and a wool carder takes the down from flowers, stuffs them into a tube or something, and lays its pollen and nectar in there, then puts an egg in there, and over, that's its way of protecting these cocoons. These are all adult bees in cocoons. You could put the wool carder um, into your fridge or not, but it's just I'm trying to be careful with having things. If you keep it in your fridge, I just would be cautious with moldy, leafy bits, but separate them.
Okay. Um, so a couple people would like this question answered. So how do we store the filled reeds between the end of the season and harvesting time?
Um, Clearly, a lot of food is sitting there ready for anyone to take. When you got them all in a one tight space, it works against you. Using a bee guard bag and just tossing, once you've got these filled cocoons and your mason bees are done, toss them into a bee guard bag and just sealing it and just storing that in your shed is probably the easiest thing you can do. I do want to add one thing. When you come across all of those inserts that we had full of mono in there, you can try to pick through that, or instead of wasting time trying to pick through, put all of those inserts filled full of healthy bees and monos, toss them into a bee guard bag, and in the spring, as the bees emerge, they're going to move in front of the parasitic wasp. You're just letting the bees out, and the mono will stay behind in these bags as they emerge. So consider moving them into something like this in the spring.
Okay. Let's see here. So here's a good question. So I've been opening my reeds from the open end, not the end with the node. We've not seen any harm from this. Do you see any problems with this method?
No, however you want to. We just find we open so many reeds up here, our fingers just get tired. And also, what we also found is when you're opening these things, the reed doesn't always split down the middle. Sometimes it kind of fragments, and you're just having a tough time pulling the last couple cocoons out where the node is. You know, either way is possible. And when you're splitting it, there's typically not a bee right up against the node. We just found this little device is super easier on hands. So either way is fine. We're just preferring this because it's so easy compared to pinching with your fingers.
We got a couple questions about pests. The first one is, how do I keep ants out of my bee houses, and are they harmful to the bees?
Well, we just learned, I think yesterday's news said there's 2.3 million ants for every human on the planet. That's, there's a lot of ants out there. Once they're typically, they're eating pollen, or they're going to go after a larva, or they're going to go after your bees if they can get to them. We find they're more of an issue when the bee is laying the nectar and the pollen in the nest holes. And years ago, we felt putting Tanglefoot or Vaseline around the edges of the house was an answer. There's a product out there called Ant Cant that turns a surface so slippery that no insect can walk on. And so if you look on our website for Ant Cant, there's a piece of tape that you're wrapping around a pole or wrapping it around a house that just stops the ants. They just can't crawl past that surface to get to your food source. I think that's better than poison.
Okay. And this is not necessarily a pest, but still something unusual found in the bee houses. So I've got grass-carrying wasp cocoons in the holes as well. What's the best method to store these for the winter?
Okay, first of all, whoever asked that question, thank you for, we know that the bees are the farmers and your wasps and the hornets in your yard are the soldiers. Okay, so there are wasps that will use these, and you're going to find bullet shapes that are, I don't know the names of these things. I would take all of those, they don't look like the mason bee cocoon. I would take them aside and keep them in your garage, a container in the garage, and then in the spring, put them into some container, like we've got our cocoon hatcheries. Let them emerge as they need to. They're typically, it's a solitary wasp, so it's going to be super harmless to you and I, but they're great predators for your yard. I would keep those aside and let them emerge as they need to in a container with a hole in it, and just let them, go on their own time frame. There's a lot of fun wasps out there. We'll learn about those as we gain in intelligence with cavity nesting insects.
And I will say that on our website, if you look in the Be Knowledgeable Mason Bee section that I showed you earlier, we do have a What's This, a guide to what you might find in your nesting materials, and it gives really good pictures and details of what you may find, what's beneficial, what's a pest, and it's a really neat guide to have handy when you're harvesting. Another question for you is, can I use a water bleach solution to wash the bee cocoons?
For a long time, the industry, mason bee industry, we're very concerned about chalk brood, and the only solution had been chlorine, bleach to clean the cocoons. And so for a long time, we were doing maybe a tablespoon of bleach to a cup of water and just washing everything as a preventative measure. When we came across the product Clean Bee, it's a wonderful Briotech is a company very near us. This is the only stabilized form of hydrochloric acid, and it is so much better for insects than, I'm trying to stay away from caustic chemicals around my cocoons. We used it forever. My company has moved on to Clean Bee. It just is a better solution than bleach, our opinion. It was tested. We did push this out to one of the bee labs, and they did confirm that when we sprayed this on chalk brood, killed chalk brood.
Question about our bee guard bag. Okay, so in storing the tubes in the bag, you used to recommend standing them upright in a box and then putting that box in the bag. Do you no longer suggest that?
Yes, I would still do that. When in the springtime, if I'm taking whatever I've got, when you've got a larva embedded in a little bit of pollen, and if you turn that hole upside down, now all of a sudden the pollen food source is on the top of your hole, and if the larva just falls off, it just dies. Okay, so the industry and we've all felt comfortable by taking that nesting hole and having it stand straight up as this larva is developing it. If it falls out of its pollen, it's just falling in that little pit of pollen. And so we're always an advocate of, when you're storing things in the summer, keeping the nesting holes straight up. We do that here.
Yeah, and one of our attendees actually mentioned that they put their filled reeds in a mason jar or mason jars, and then they put like a little bit of screen over the top of it and then just seal that screen on. And that works well. So a creative solution.
Yep.
If you don't have a bee guard bag and you've got a lot of mason jars lying around, so that was pretty cool. We also had a suggestion that I do want to mention before I ask you another question, to highlight our capped end guide. So we do have a PDF capped end guide on our website as well. Again, in the Be Knowledgeable section, that would be just in the general solitary cavity nesting bees category. But it gives you a good indication of, lots of things nest in your nesting materials and you don't always know what they are, but it helps you kind of learn what might be nesting based on the end cap material. So whether it be, tree resin or leafy bits or, little bits of pebbles, whether it's very smooth mud or bumpy mud, it kind of gives you an indication of what's inside without actually getting inside. So definitely check that out. Thank you for reminding us that was one of our many resources. Thank you, Jim, for that. Anything to add on that, Dave, while I find you another question?
No, I think that's the beautiful part. Initially, to the world, there's only just a mud using bee. And then as we learn more and more, you've got all of these, there are bees that live in the deserts that use cactus pulp, pollen, egg, cactus pulp to divide it. Wounded Douglas fir trees out here have a great source of sap, pollen, egg, tree sap. And so there's a lot of species across the country that do a lot of things. And as we learn more and more about these bees, our Crown Bees is going to be trying to work with the researchers and the land grant universities to find these bees, learn more about them, see how we can help and encourage them to increase in numbers before they're gone. There's there's a lot of stuff happening out there to our bees, and we're advocates of trying to have healthy bees in healthy environments.
Great. How about, we've got a lot of visitors with us from Seattle, and we've had kind of an oddball year as far as weather goes in Seattle this year. So is it too early to harvest mason bee cocoons in the Seattle
No.
area?
I would feel very comfortable if you have these huge, big, hot heat waves where we can think through a bee's life in the summer as a larva, that they've acclimated to, a Texas bee is different than a Seattle bee, that the Texas bee knows that it's going to have all this hot temperature, so it's adjusted so that by the time September, October rolls around where it's going into fall, it's had the right amount of heat days to get there to that right time. If all of a sudden you've had super heated temperatures where it's not normal, when that bee is matured, it's actually too early. So if you've had a really hot summer and your bees are out there, I would encourage you to be harvesting a little sooner, early September, mid-September, just that when a bee is done with its complete development, it's a shiny bee inside, in a cocoon, they then convert development from surviving off developing into surviving off their stored fats. And so if it's still super warm around you and you've got a bee that's finished, as it now is super warm, its metabolism is high. It's going to be consuming that stored fats in its body super fast. So the sooner you can harvest this, the sooner you can get them into a cooler environment, so it's got a chance to make it through the winter, is what you need to do with your superheated environment. So if it's too hot, I would be pulling my harvesting back 2 or 3 weeks, so early September, and pushing them into a cool environment as soon as you could.
I know you maybe mentioned this already a little bit, but could you talk a little bit more about how you can identify whether a cocoon is viable or not? Or if you can tell if there's parasitic wasps in there?
Right. So the viability, typically a cocoon is going to be, when you're opening these things up, a cocoon is a cocoon. They're very durable. If you get them wet, physically toss them in the water, and put them on a light table. I've got a light table here on the side that, or even I've got if I put my cocoons on a bright light, you're able to see right through them. And if you find cocoons that are ruby in color-ish, what that tells us is that as the larva was spinning its cocoon, it died somehow. Mono might have got in there. It died somehow. And so all of a sudden it stopped spinning its cocoon. And so it's no longer going to be, thick. It's a off-colored cocoon. As you're looking through a thick light, through a light, you're going to pull those out, and those will be suspect. When you put it on a bright light, I can see right here the outline of a bee right through the cocoon. And you'll see, if you're looking for like mono, there'll be a mass of like 10 or 12 little tiny things. You can see all those little things in your bright light. It's real easy to do. If you need to do that, that's a lot of work. And I'm an advocate of saying, if I've got a lot of things that are suspect, let them just come out in a bee guard bag versus doing onesie. Easier, I think, is best.
How about harvesting in the Portland area? Is that too soon, or is it like Seattle and you can go ahead and probably
like Seattle, press ahead? I think now through December. And can you wait all the way through till March to harvest? Sure. If you wait till that long, March, the bees are trying to come out a little bit. If you're moving things around, you might actually have bees emerge when you're harvesting in March. I would never wash a cocoon in March. Other reasons. So I'm going to say anytime, maybe January all the way through now is fine to be harvesting. But do keep them in a cool environment until you do so.
This is a good question. So what if, I'm going to rephrase a bit, but what if some bees hatch out early in the spring while in the humidity in the fridge? Can you soak a cotton ball in some sugar water and it'll help it survive until weather heats up? What do you do in that scenario?
Well, they just answered their own question. Yes. So that's typically a function of your refrigerator is too warm. If you keep your refrigerator at 38 or 40 degrees, low, the metabolism of the bee is high, and they'll consume the fats sooner and will emerge in your refrigerator. The boys, when they hit 0, they're coming out at 35 degrees in our coolers here. When the girls hit 0 in their stored fats, they start consuming their eggs internally. And so we'll find that mason bee females can actually survive all the way into September, but they're just barren. There's no eggs in there, but they were able to survive. That's their mechanism to survive. So cooler refrigerator, if they do emerge, cotton ball with 50% sugar, white table sugar, and water, they can survive off that for quite a while. Depends upon the time of year, but weeks.
Okay. So you mentioned that we should be harvesting our cocoons about now. What if the temperature outside is in the mid to high 70s? Is there a specific type of environment that you should be harvesting your cocoons? Like early morning when it's cooler, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter. I would do them inside with music playing and some friends and a glass of wine would be my preferred, environment. Good question. But I would pull them out of that environment and get them into a cooler environment soon.
Okay. I don't see any new questions. There's still some time if you've got a couple lingering questions that you want to throw at us. In the meantime, Dave, would you mind just talking like one more plug for Bee Buyback, which is opening in October, and then maybe Bee Mail? What are those things?
Yes. About October 1st, it's open. We are exchanging cocoons for store certificates, cocoons for cash. We absolutely need you participating with us. And so the process is simple. You're going online. You'll find under our programs, thecrownbees.com programs, you'll find the bee buyback. Fill out a little form there, mail things to us, and then once it's here, we're in contact with you, letting you know what that we got them, what we found, what the cocoon count was, when we're going to send you your check or your credit. So we're very processed to ensure that what you're doing is good for you and helps us out. We absolutely need bees from all over the country, and your bees wind up going into other people's hands, nurseries, researchers' hands. We've got a lot of researchers, the team with us, and then farm. So we don't have enough capacity to get to the millions of bees by ourselves. We're relying upon you guys. And then the other part is we do have a thing called bee mail once a month, sometimes twice a month. We say, hey, it's September. Do this. We don't sell any, we don't sell your emails. We're a very ethical company. We're here to help you be successful. And then a plug for Kylie in customer service. If you have questions, go online, that little, any one of our web pages or on your cell phone, you'll see that little leaf there in the bottom right-hand corner. We've got some self-help guides through there, or let me talk with a human. We're working with you as all the time. So we're here to answer your questions.
Great. So we've got a couple more questions that came in. Do you do bee buyback from Canada?
Yeah. So the answer would be yes, but in a varied way. We while it's the same species of bee on both sides of the borders, many times it takes a while, too long, to push bees across the border, and we are legally able to import and export this bee. But we've got two teammates up there, that someone in Ontario and someone in BC, and if you send us an email, we'll connect you with our two teammates that if a person in Canada buys our bees, they're getting them from either one of those sources, and we're very comfortable with those sources that and when they sell their bees for the US, we're shipping for them. So it's a very across the border, really solid arrangement. So yes, we do, but send us an email, we'll connect you up.
Here is I guess sticking with harvesting, what is a good temperature for the refrigerator when you put your humidity and your cocoons in there?
Cooler is better. We keep our coolers here at 34 degrees, roughly 1 centigrade. I would recommend that if you're out there in a warmer refrigerator, you're just going to find your bees they will have consumed their fats faster than you want them to, and you'll find bees emerging maybe before your pollen sources in your yard before you're ready. So cooler, 34, 36.
And the cooler temperatures do what for the bees?
The cooler temperatures just keep their metabolism just that much lower. You can toss these bees survive just fine out there in North Dakota, outside. You can keep these bees at -10. They're not their blood, whatever. I'm not a scientist. Whatever their blood is, it's got antifreeze in it, so they're able to be really cold. Don't worry about it.
And it's just the cooler temperatures allow them to kind of conserve some of their fat stores, because they only have a certain amount of fat stores to survive off of, and when they're used up, they're used up. So the cooler the temperature, they use through or blow through those.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any recommendations if I have bees nesting in drilled holes in a block of wood?
I would, in this season, shift from that practice to something where you can find whole cocoons in your hands. Using a bee guard bag and throwing your block of wood into here in the spring, sealing this thing up, and so the bees can't get, nothing else can get out. What you don't want are the bees going back in and re-nesting into those disease-filled holes. So it's a one-way trip. Bees are going to merge, males first, then females, and just daily, you're just opening them up, letting them out, and they just can't go back in there. So I would be putting your block of wood someplace close by underneath your nesting hole, and then they'll do that transfer. They're looking for holes of the right size. So not letting the bees go back into the tray is, using bee guard bag, probably the best path. Great question.
Great. So just a little clarification. So it's still fairly warm during the day here in Eastern Washington, and many other areas, but cold at night. So do you harvest now or once fall is really around?
I would harvest now. If it's warm outside, if it's always like this around you, you can wait. But I'm going to suggest that by October, your spring mason bees have finished their maturity, and I would consider, not leaving them outside. You can. I mean, it's natural. It's just with our chaotic climate change going on, we're just seeing more often that it gets warm sometime before the plants have shown up with the pollen. And so the bees will come out because they've been warm and they're now ready to go. And as they emerge, there's just nothing for them to survive on, and they just die. And so it's, we're an advocate of trying to, in this climate mess, we're an advocate of trying to help you keep your bees there healthy as long as possible.
So this is not a mason bee related question, but still makes sense to ask. When do you start storing leafcutter bees?
Leafcutter bees about now are probably, they could have been, if they were flying 3 weeks ago, the eggs are probably all now larvae. And I would take my leafcutter bees, you can leave them in their tubes all winter long. You can harvest at any point. We're kind of just saying, harvest those more into deep spring and kind of focus on the spring mason bees and the summer leafcutters later on in the season. You can harvest now. You'll just store them someplace rodent proof, in a shed with a container on there, maybe a little air hole inside there, but you can harvest at any point all the way now through May.
Here's a great question that I think needs some clarification. We mentioned that these bees survive outside, no problem, in 0 degrees and even colder. Can you put mason bee cocoons in your freezer?
You can do anything you want. I would say don't do that. I think you're going to wind up killing your bees. I think they can handle that cold for a spell, a couple days maybe. But I'm going to say you're probably going to wind up killing your bees. So not the freezer. Unless your freezer is set at 33, then go for it.
Yeah, I think, the consistent cool temperatures of the refrigerator it's cool enough to keep your bees from using up all of their fat stores without risking too long, like extreme exposure to too cold of temperatures. Do we sell the light that Dave is using, or do you know where to get one? We do not sell the light, but do you know where to get one, Dave?
Costco is my store of choice. I got a 3-pack for $20. Okay, I use this all over my garage and my house. Yeah, it's a really nice little light. What we actually use around here is this type of a light panel where we're just putting a pile of cocoons on here. So we're doing thousands of cocoons at a time, and we're almost going blind looking in through these bright lights. But that's what we're using. That's our light table. It was just something that you can get from Home Depot. It's just a LED lights that we're going through.
Great. We are definitely past an hour, but we do have a few more questions that, I think we can go ahead and answer. For those of you that were planning on an hour and need to bounce, thank you very much for joining us. We did put a code for 10% off your entire order by entering Harvest22 at checkout. So if you need any Crown Bee supplies or harvesting tools, now's the time to get them. It will be valid through the month, so you've got time. It doesn't have to be today. And then also, please make sure that you check out all of our resources on our website. We have there's a little green leaf in the bottom corner. If you still have questions, somebody will be able to get your answer for you. Otherwise, we've got the Be Knowledgeable library. Check out our YouTube page for all of our videos. If you're interested in leafcutter bees, we did a leafcutter bee webinar a few months back, and that is on YouTube, so you can go ahead and watch that there. But for those of you that can stick around, I'm going to give you a few more questions, Dave, if you're down for it. Cool. So this is another question about leafcutter bees, and it's just kind of what will cause leafcutter bees to emerge? Do we have to keep them below a certain temp? So I think that's do you put them in the refrigerator like you do mason bees?
And probably I bet the question relies more during the summer. How would you hold them back? What we've learned as we've taken an only alfalfa leafcutter bee industry, and we've moved it into, you can move it from alfalfa to a yard just fine. What we're learning is that a leafcutter bee will go through multiple cycles, and it's actually pretty messy. If you're trying to stop a leafcutter bee from emerging during the summer, I think our answer is just let them do their thing. And when you finally see them not emerging, this would probably be, September. That's when you're pulling them out and protecting them. So I would let them do their thing.
Okay. So it was very hot in Seattle this summer, and I know that it was very hot in lots of other locations. Is it okay that I stored my block in the mesh bag in a cool basement instead of leaving them outside?
Yeah, no. If it was the bees are looking for normal temperatures they're using normal temperatures to get to this point. This is why if I take a Seattle bee and I move it down to Texas, it's typically doesn't survive the progeny, the eggs and the following bees don't typically survive the winter because you're out of whack with what temperatures that species or microspecies is adjusted to. Okay, so by having them in a cool basement at 55 or so, they've missed those 70 and 80 degree days. You haven't killed them. I would harvest. I think you said drilled blocks, so I would let them do their thing now and use the bag next year. If you did that with reeds, or where you can actually hold the cocoon in your hand, I would open my cocoons up with a pair of scissors and check on the condition of the bee. If it's white, very well could be white, so it didn't move from, as it was metamorphosing, it was a larva, it then got legs and eyes and everything. If it's not shiny and black or brown, if it's a cornifrons, then I would keep it in my house for a month to help it move into its final stage. So I might, if you can hold a cocoon in your hand, I might open one up with a pair of scissors and just check on I would focus on the smaller cocoons. If these are the males, open those up and see what's going on, would give you a feel. We do this ourselves here before we put all of our bees down in our coolers, our millions of bees. we are sacrificing a few males to make sure that we're putting our bees in correctly.
Okay, great. And then this is a question I've seen previously and forgot to answer. We used to do our live harvesting party in the office to help people that were local and could drive out to harvest their bee cocoons with us. Do you anticipate us doing that again in the future? Not this year.
In the voting power of this company, the vote was not yet this year. COVID still kind of bought into the past couple of years. We may the following years, and it'll be. I'm always an advocate because the more people around, it's kind of fun to show what's going on. But if my team says they'd prefer not, then I don't want to run a full endeavor by myself. So
throwing us under the bus, Dave.
we might not do it again. Hold tight till next September. We'll have an answer at that point.
Yeah, possibly in the future. I think we're going to do the online ones as well, just because there are so many people that don't live within driving distance. So this is a way for us to reach everyone that is harvesting as well. So yeah, in the future, we'll definitely discuss possibly in person, and maybe we can figure out how to in person and live stream at the same time. And hopefully the internet will work in our favor that time. So
okay.
What? Sorry,
Thanks,
I'm giving you one more, Dave. Sorry, because this is a rephrase. For leafcutter bees, how do you delay them from emerging until after the mason bee season? I'm afraid a warm shed or basement might trigger an early emergence.
You can keep if you're gonna actually. We keep our leafcutter bees in. We keep them in a cooler at 34 degrees, our leafcutter bees, and so it's only when the temperatures get above 65 do they begin to develop from larva to adult bee. So I would keep them just cool, and then if you're going to be developing these, incubating these yourself in the spring, it takes 3 to 5 weeks depending upon the temperatures once you bring them out, and then they'll start emerging. So I would keep them cool and begin developing them late May would be my 2 cents. These bees perform best when they're in the upper 70s. And so thinking through that it takes 4 or 5 weeks for the bees to mature, you're projecting where is that 70s that would be perfect for them. You're just got to make that guess yourself, looking at where you're at in the country.
Great. I'm going to call it there.
If you want to get bees from us, we're always having bees incubated from May all the way through end of August. So, we're always able to send out fresh bees.
Okay, I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And again, apologies for the hiccups in the beginning. You can't control the internet, so when it goes out.
No, we can't.
But yeah, thank you for bearing with us as we tried to figure it out on the fly. We will post this video on YouTube in a day or two for those of you that join late or would just like to rewatch it. And yeah, visit us online and sign up for B-Mail, and we're happy to help you out with any additional questions.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.